Right, so today we're going to be ranking every single War Thunder nation in Ground RB. Now, this is based off of my opinion and how well I think they're doing right now. I'll factor in CAS, helicopters, SPAs, tanks, and everything in between. It will only be for top tier, like I'll say 11-7 and above. So anything below that, feel free to make up your own opinions on that. But if you want to follow my opinions, they'll be here, of course. It will be like a tier system, so you will have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and they'll of course be split into those tiers because currently it is very, very hard to make an actual tier list, and it would just be so the top four is basically just the same because they are so hard to split apart. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it. The first and only nation at C tier is Israel. Now, the reason why they're here, and also in the gameplay you're seeing the Ramsey. I have played Israel top tier before. The gameplay is purely just there for you to watch something while I'm ranking this. It's not representative of my rankings, so if I do well in the Swedish tanks where I rank them low, that is not representative, and if I do bad in the Russian tanks where I rank them high, that is not representative, just so we get that clear. But the Israeli tanks are pretty decent. They are okay, but the lack of a good heli. They have the Black Hawk, which has fire and forget missiles, but they have no DIRCM. They don't have any currently competitive CAS. Currently stuff like Spice 250s and Brimstones, KH-38 MTs. They're all of the best CAS planes in the game right now. The planes that carry those. But unfortunately, Israel just have none of that. They don't have any good CAS and they don't have any good helis. So for that reason, I have to rank them at C tier. Now, moving into our next tier, which is B tier, we have USA. Now, this is honestly a pretty decent nation. Ever since they got the Apache E, they're actually competitive at top tier, but they still lack in the ground department and the air department. Sure, they have the F-18E, they have F-16C, F-15E, but then again, there are just better CAS planes, which I'll get onto later in the video. The helis are doing pretty well, although the Apache E is the worst of all of the DIRCM helis, due to the missiles being really, really inconsistent compared to the Z-10 and the Mi-28 NM's missiles. Although their tanks are really good, you have a really diverse top-tier lineup with stuff like the HSTVL, all the Abrams, you have some pretty good SPAs, ADATs not so good, but the NASAMs and the Claws are pretty good SPAs. And on top of that, you have two different forms of light tanks. You have the HSTVL, and then you also have the Striker, which is a completely different type of light tank compared to the HSTVL. And that is why it is put in B tier. Now, do remember, B tier is not necessarily bad. B tier is just worse than what's above it. Alright, next up in B tier, we have Italy. Now, Italy does have some pretty good tanks and some pretty good CAS. They recently got the Eurofighter ASA, which is able to carry spice bombs and brimstones at the same time, which makes it a really, really powerful plane. Although there is one small thing about Italy which is really, really suffering for them. First of all, they have one good top tier tank, which is the Leopard 2A7 Hungarian one, but they don't have anything else. The Arietes are paper. They've always been known to be made out of paper at top tier, although there are some things about them that they could get changed, but you never know. As of right now, they are B tier. Their planes are definitely probably A, high A, maybe S tier worthy, but then you have the helis that don't have DIRCM, which means they can't really do anything. They are fire and forget, one of them is anyway, which is a good thing about it, but it just doesn't compete with all the other DIRCM helis such as the Apache Guardian, Mi-28 NM, and Z-10ME, which is why it is put so low on the rankings. Although I do like the Arietes, I cannot rank them higher because they aren't that good. I mean, they have DM53 and decent thermals, pretty good mobility, but the armor is really what matters at top tier. Of course, the motto is always to not get shot at, but if you do eventually get shot at, it would be nice to survive, which the Italian tanks cannot. Now, moving up until A tier, our first nation here is Great Britain. Now, the reason why they're here, some of you might argue that they should be lower because of their tanks, but I disagree. They have a pretty good heli, the Apache E or Apache Mark II, it's the same thing. And they have the Eurofighter ASA, they have the Gripen, they have so many different planes and so many different CAS styles to play, which means they are a pretty good nation. They do have the new event vehicle, which I've heard some say is not very good. I mean, you do finally get some spikes and some other stuff for the British, and you have some pretty decent top tier tanks. You have the Black Knight and all this other stuff that just makes it like a complete nation, which is worthy of an A tier spot. Most nations in this game will be A tier or above, especially after the Apache E's got introduced to a bunch of nations. And after a bunch of cast planes got added to some nations, Eurofighter Typhoon ASA. I would say if the Eurofighter Typhoon ASA wasn't in the British tech tree, I would probably put them at B tier. But the ASA Typhoon definitely saves them and puts them up into A tier, although it is a pretty low A tier. I do like their tanks, but it's definitely more of a sniping playstyle than a close quarters playstyle for the British tanks. And right after Great Britain, we have Japan. Now, Japan is a really good nation. It's gotten a lot better due to the fact that the S330 MKM has been introduced to the tech tree. But again, I cannot put them higher due to the fact that their tanks are not that good. Yes, you do get the 4-second autoloader, and there is a lot of hype, especially amongst new players when they see that this tank has a 4-second reload compared to the other tanks at top tier, which have a much higher reload. But the problem with the tanks is they are made out of literal paper, much like the Arietes. They have some really good casts in the SU-30, and they have the Apache Guardian as well, but I just feel like their tanks lets them down. And we haven't talked a lot about SPAs because the nations so far have had pretty decent SPAs, but this nation has some of the worst SPAs in the game. Probably the worst at top tier, I would say, if my memory serves me right. I don't think there's anything that's worse than Typo 3. Most combat happens close range. You cannot outrange anything, or you can outrange anything, but if they come close to you, you're just done. Like, they can turn circles around you 6 kilometers and you won't be able to hit them, unfortunately. This means that Japan is in A tier, slightly above Great Britain due to the fact that they have the SU-30 MKM and the Apache Guardian, and I do like their tanks just a tiny bit more than the British tanks, but they just aren't that good. And next up on the list, we might have a bit of a controversial take, but it is Germany. Germany is at A tier together with the two other nations I just mentioned, and the simple fact is just they don't have a good heli. Their heli is really not that good. It's a Eurocopter. It does get fire and forgets, but it doesn't have the IRCM, which is currently, as of recording this and as of talking about this, the meta at top tier is fire and forget helis, because in theory you can just hover your heli and no one will be able to shoot you down. Of course, like Pantsirs and stuff that has guided munitions, which you guide with your mouse, can shoot you down. But other stuff like top tier SPAs have no chance of shooting you down, basically because the IRCM blocks IR, and because you have no velocity, radar missiles won't know where you are, basically. So that is why Germany is put into A tier. It is put into one of the higher categories of A tier, and definitely amongst the top of A tier. But there is a nation above it in A tier, which I will go into in just a second. Although I will say German cast is really good with the Eurofighter ASA and stuff like that. It is a really good cast nation and it is a really good tank nation. Their heli tree just lets them down so much. I really wanted to put them in S tier, but their heli tree is just letting them down a lot. And I know I talk a lot about helis, but that is currently what's defining most of the meta. So that is, how it is at the moment. And next up on the list is one that's probably a bit controversial as well. It is Sweden. Now, Sweden is one of these nations that suffer from the exact same as Germany, although they do cast a bit better than Germany. Their tanks are about the same as the Germans. You do get a better light tank at top tier, the CV90-120. But I would argue, not argue, the SPA is a bit worse, so that balances out. Although their cast is better with the Gripen E, their helis are still bad. They are not good enough for top tier. They don't have the IRCM. They don't even have fire and forgets, which is why Germany and Sweden can be swapped around however you want, really. But for me, this is how my ranking goes. I would say that those two nations are just not that competitive right now. Of course, if it was a pure ground match, these two nations would probably be top 3 easily. But it's not. That's not how ground RB is. Some people may wish it was, some people may not. Personally, I'm fine with the way it is right now, but yeah, that is each to their own, really. Next up on the list, we are going into S tier now. We've elevated, and it is China, which is the first in S tier. This is just a great nation. Their tanks are really good, although not as survivable as something like the Russians. They still are pretty survivable, like freakishly survivable sometimes. And yeah, they are just really good tanks. They also have a really great heli tree due to the Z10ME and the Apache E being in the same tree. So the worst DRCM heli and the second best DRCM heli in the game being in the same tree benefits them a lot. Now, the department that lacks the most, I would probably say, is their CAS. They have the J10C, which has gotten the IR bombs, which is pretty good. I mean, you get 9 of them. Pretty good for CAS. Would I say it's one of the best CAS nations in the game? Definitely not, but I am definitely saying this nation is an S tier, together with the 2 others I will name in a second. Now, the only thing that's laying them down other than CAS is their SPAs. The HQ11 is not exactly the best SPA ever, but it is definitely workable. It's better than the Typo 3 for sure, which, yeah, makes a lot of sense why they're this at S tier. And yeah, I do really like the nation. I like to play it, and especially with the CAS and the helis that they have, it is a pretty fun nation to play. Next up on the list at S tier, we have the French. Now, the French are just amazing. They have the Rafale for CAS. They also have the Mirage 2000 RDMD, I think it's called, which has 7 hammers as well. It is just a good top tier nation. You have the Leclercs, which are pretty survivable, even though if you do look at their armor, they don't seem that survivable. They do survive quite a lot of shots. Their turret is quite strong. You have a 5-second autoloader. You have a really good round. There is just a lot of positives about this nation. You also get one of the best SPAs, the SAM-T. You get pretty good helis. I mean, you get the Apache Guardian, which is just, like I've said before, it's a good heli. But there is one specific reason why I put them at this S tier instead of, Germany or something, which is just they are an all-around nation. Everything is good. There's nothing bad about it. Like, the helis are more than usable. The tanks are probably some of the best at top tier, I would say. And then you have their CAS planes like Rafale, insanely fast, uses the hammers, and just can get into the notch super quickly. So if a buck missile is launched at it, there is actually a chance it can notch pretty quickly. It is just a really good nation and a good aircraft in general. Moving on to what's probably not surprising, the current best nation in top tier is Russia. They have great tanks. You have the T-80BVM, you have the T-90M, and then for CAS, you have the Su-30, you have the Su-34, you have the Mi-28NM for helis. It is just the most complete nation. You have the Buk M3s as well. Now, the only thing I can put, lacking at top tier is a light tank. That is the only thing. You do have the Sprut, which is definitely usable at top tier. You also have the 2S38 and the BMP-2M, which are also usable at top tier. And now you all of a sudden have the BMP-T Terminator, which is not a light tank, but basically it is. Which all are usable at top tier, but they lack a top tier light tank, which I think they could last a while before they actually get one. So this is the top of S tier. This is just the supreme nation at the moment. And that is due to all the factors I was talking about. You have probably the most survivable and most trolley armor tanks in the entire game. You also do have some of the best CAS, if not the best CAS. Some people might say that the Gripen E or Eurofighter ASA is above this one, which I respect, of course. But there is no debating that the helis are just better than any other helis. You have the Mi-28NM and the Ka-52, which are just so much better than any other heli in the game right now. Alright, that was it for this video of the best / my favorite / my opinion top tier trees in War Thunder. Now, this doesn't count for ARB. The ARB rankings would be a bit different, and please do leave a comment if you want me to do a video like that. But yeah, you saw me using the Finnish Leopard for the Germans, the Ramsicle for Israel and stuff like that, but I have played these nations on other accounts at top tier. For example, Germany, I've spent quite a lot of time playing at top tier. Israel, not so much, but the other nations, I have actually played at top tier before. So I think I'm able to form an actual opinion on this. Now, if you disagree, please do leave a comment saying why you disagree, why a certain nation should be higher or lower. And yeah, I'll read through them all and I'll see you guys in the next one. Babe, I'll always need you. You pull my heart together, I stand up and follow leader. And it's a part of me that I can't even get to miss. Laying like some sardines, it hurts me just to reminisce. That PT